Veteran bought a 50-cent stone mansion, what his dog found under the floor. Shook the entire town, Ethan Coles never believed a dog could sense the past. Not until the night Rex refused to step onto the creaking floorboards, staring at him with that fierce, unblinking urgency he only showed in war zones. Minutes later, Ethan learned the truth. His dog hadn't been warning him about danger. Rex had been warning him about something buried, something that was never supposed to be found. Ethan Cole had expected silence. He had expected dust, creaking wood, maybe a few mice skittering behind walls. What he did not expect was the way the air shifted the moment he and Rex stepped out of the truck, as if the old stone mansion had been holding its breath for years and chose that moment to exhale. It didn't look like a place worth even the 50 cents he paid for it. A hulking, pale structure crouched at the edge of Maple Ridge's woods, 3 stories tall and cold as January bone. The county clerk had practically pushed the deed across the counter. No heirs, no taxes, no claims, just an abandoned property sold for the legal minimum. But the moment Ethan took his first step onto the gravel path, Rex froze. The German shepherd's muscles locked, ears angled back, tail stiff but not tucked. His breathing shifted into the low, controlled exhale Ethan had heard in Helmand when Rex scented a buried device. "Easy, buddy," Ethan muttered. Rex didn't blink. Ethan followed the dog's stare to the front door. Heavy oak, iron handle, too ornate for Missouri. The kind of door meant to outlast storms and secrets. The wind rattled the porch railing, but Rex's posture didn't budge. "You walked through gunfire." Ethan whispered, "Don't tell me an empty house is what scares you." Still no movement. Ethan knelt beside him. Rex's pulse thudded under his hand. Not panic, calculation. The dog was measuring something Ethan couldn't see. Maybe this was a mistake. Ethan murmured. Then the wind died, just stopped. The sudden stillness pushed him forward. He unlocked the front door. The key turned far too easily for a place the county swore was untouched for decades. The door opened with a soft sound, more sigh than creak. Inside, the air was stale but surprisingly clean. Dust floated in light beams cutting through half-closed shutters. A curved staircase dominated the foyer. The banister gleamed faintly through the dust, as if someone's hand had touched it recently. Ethan stepped inside. Rex didn't follow. "Come on, boy." Rex backed up a step. That alone tightened something in Ethan's chest. Rex never retreated, not once in deployment. The dog had walked through mortars to reach him. Ethan gave a sharp whistle. Rex finally moved, but reluctantly. Every step was cautious, nails clicking lightly on the wood. He sniffed the floorboards, the baseboards, the walls. His tail stayed low, sweeping in slow, tight arcs. The house breathed around them, too still for a place abandoned, too preserved. Ethan walked deeper into the foyer. A cold draft slipped past his ankles. He turned. No open windows, no vents, just a chill that came from below. He found the basement door half hidden behind a coat rack. When he pulled it open, a wave of cold air hit him hard enough to sting his eyes. It wasn't rotting mildew cold. It was controlled, deliberate. Rex growled, low and vibrating, from the top of the stairs. Ethan clicked on his flashlight and descended. Each step complained under his weight. The beam cut through dust motes, revealing stone walls and an unfinished floor. Nothing unusual at first glance. Then he noticed the one thing that didn't belong. A metal grate buried under a thin layer of dirt. Newer than the rest of the basement, too clean, too precise. Ethan knelt, brushing dirt aside. A vent, a cold air vent, in a house with no working utilities. His stomach tightened. Someone had engineered airflow down here. Recently. He heard Rex's claws scraping behind him. The dog stood halfway down the stairs, body low, tail rigid. His ears twitched once, then locked onto the far wall. "Hear something?" Ethan whispered. Rex's growl deepened. Focused. Not fear. Warning. Ethan swept the flashlight across the room. Nothing. Dust, stone, old shelving. But Rex had never been wrong. He followed the dog's stare toward the storage shelves. Something flickered in the corner of his eye, a shadow shifting against the far wall. He whipped the beam toward it. Nothing. Just stone. The temperature dropped another degree. Rex barked. Sharp. Commanding. The kind of bark that meant move now. Ethan grabbed his flashlight tighter and backed towards the stairs. Rex stayed beside him, muscles coiled. Upstairs, the house greeted them with thick silence. No wind, no creaking wood, just a stillness that felt too aware. Ethan locked the basement door and exhaled. He didn't scare easily, but the uneasy rhythm between his pulse and the silence told him something was off. That night, he unrolled his sleeping bag near the fireplace. Rex lay facing the staircase, eyes open, ears flicking toward every shift of the house. Around midnight, Ethan finally drifted off. He woke to Rex's bark splitting the dark. The dog stood rigid, staring at the staircase. His teeth bared slightly, not in threat but in recognition. As if he knew whoever was standing there, as if he had scented them before. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and flicked it on. The landing at the top of the stairs was empty, but the third step from the top still vibrated, as if someone had just stepped off it. By morning, the house had gone still again. Too still. Ethan brewed instant coffee over the old gas burner he'd managed to coax back to life, trying to convince himself that the night before had been nothing more than exhaustion and nerves. A new place, a strange house, shadows playing tricks. But Rex made sure he couldn't lie to himself for long. The dog had barely slept. He paced in slow, deliberate circles near the base of the staircase, pausing every few steps to stare up toward the landing. When Ethan moved to go check the upper floor, Rex blocked him, standing broad and unmoving across the first step. "Move, buddy." Rex didn't move. He lowered his head, eyes locked on Ethan, posture stiff enough to make a warning clear. Not now. Not alone. Ethan exhaled through his nose. It wasn't defiance, it was discipline. Rex had done this once in Fallujah, when a sniper had waited behind a shattered balcony. Ethan had almost walked straight into the kill zone, and Rex had planted himself in front of him the exact same way. That memory alone was enough to stop him. Fine. Not now. He stepped away. Rex kept watching the stairs. The rest of the morning went no easier. In the living room, while Ethan rolled up his sleeping bag, Rex abruptly swung his head toward the far wall and barked once. A bark with edges. Ethan froze. What is it? Rex didn't look away. He walked slowly toward the wall, lowered his nose, and inhaled in short, rapid bursts. His tail stiffened. Then he barked again, louder, deeper, and began scratching the baseboard. Ethan knelt beside him and pressed his ear to the plaster. Nothing. No hollow echo. No vibration. Just a cold wall in a cold house. But the look in Rex's eyes wasn't negotiable. The dog wasn't reacting to sound. He was reacting to scent. Something was behind that wall, something old enough to be masked but not forgotten. Ethan placed a hand on Rex's back. What are you picking up? Rex's muscles were tight as wire beneath his palm, alert, not panicked, focused. He'd seen this stance twice overseas, once for explosives, once for a wounded Marine buried under rubble. This wasn't random. Ethan stood slowly, looking around at the house with a new kind of attention. Yesterday he'd been tired. Today he felt something else creeping in. The feeling he used to get before an ambush. Not danger itself, the air around danger. He shook it off and tried to busy his hands. moving boxes in the kitchen, clearing broken jars from the pantry, sweeping dust from the hall. But Rex interrupted him again. The dog stood in the narrow back corridor, pacing in tight, efficient loops. His nose hovered an inch from the floor, moving back and forth in straight lines as if tracking a buried fuse wire. "Rex, talk to me." Rex stopped, looked at Ethan once, then resumed his pattern. Ethan watched him, chest tightening. This was not aimless behavior. Rex was scanning, mapping, calculating, the same method he used before marking an IED field. Ethan felt the back of his neck prickle. He crouched beside the dog. The old wallpaper peeled under his fingers, brittle as snake skin. But beneath the peeling strip he felt something smooth, something newer. He pressed his thumb into the plaster. A section flexed. A patch. Recent. He stepped back, letting that settle. Someone had been doing work here long after the county claimed the place was abandoned. Someone who knew how to hide things behind clean lines and fresh paint. And Rex was picking up the scent through all of it. The wind outside shifted. The front door creaked. Not opening. Breathing. Ethan straightened. The house didn't feel empty. It felt paused, as if the moment before a truth arrived. Rex stiffened again, staring down the same hallway he had circled earlier. His ears pricked, and a low growl formed deep in his chest. Not loud, not aggressive, just a sound meant for Ethan alone. "Pay attention." Ethan stepped forward, heart climbing up his throat. He scanned the hallway. Nothing but peeling wallpaper and dim light. No shadows moving. No figure waiting. But Rex edged closer, nose twitching violently now. His breath quickened. Then, without warning, he barked at the ceiling. Ethan jerked his gaze upward. The ceiling sagged just slightly. Faint, nearly imperceptible. But enough. He grabbed a chair and climbed up, pushing at the sagging patch with his fingertips. Something inside shifted. Metal, not pipes. He pulled harder. A small hinge clicked. Ethan froze. Rex's body locked, muscles trembling with anticipation. The dog wasn't looking at the ceiling anymore. He was looking at Ethan, ready for whatever came next. Ethan pulled the panel down. Dust exploded into the hallway. Hidden above him was a narrow storage crawlspace. Most of it was empty. But on the far end, pressed against a beam, lay a small metal object wrapped in cloth. He reached for it. The moment he touched the bundle, Rex barked so sharply Ethan almost dropped it. It wasn't a threat bark. It was a signal. Brace. Ethan unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a brass key. Old, heavy, engraved with 2 letters. VH Ethan's breath caught. Vernon Hale, the former mayor, the man who supposedly died 6 years earlier. He looked down at Rex. "You found this, didn't you?" Rex blinked once. A soldier's confirmation. The ceiling panel hung open. The cold air pooled at Ethan's feet. The house felt alive now, every wall humming with a truth pressing to be told. Ethan closed his fist around the key. Rex stepped closer, leaning his body against Ethan's leg, not for comfort, but in solidarity, a partner reclaiming their formation. This wasn't about a house, or odd noises, or old plaster. It was history, buried deep, and Rex had just dug up the first bone. The third morning brought a brittle kind of silence, the kind that clung to the walls and made footsteps sound sharper against the old wood. Ethan had barely slept. Rex hadn't slept at all. The dog lay near the hallway, chin on his paws, eyes fixed on the wall he'd been pacing around since dawn. Ethan tried to ignore the tension building in his chest, but when Rex lifted his head sharply and stared at the plaster again, he felt the old instinct kick in. The instinct that said, "Follow the dog, not your doubts." "Show me," Ethan said quietly. Rex rose without hesitation. For a moment his whole body pointed like a compass needle caught by a magnetic field. Then he moved, nails skittering across the wood as he pressed his nose to the exact patch of wall he had barked at the night before. He pawed once. The sound that came back was wrong. Hollow. Ethan's pulse climbed. He knelt and rapped his knuckles against the plaster. The echo was faint, but unmistakably shallow, like space lived behind the wall. Rex stood at his shoulder, body rigid. "All right," Ethan murmured. "Let's take a look." He grabbed the multi-tool from his pocket and wedged the blade under a cracked line in the plaster. The first piece flaked off easy. Too easy, as if someone had layered new paint over something they needed to hide fast. He dug deeper, pulling away strips until a thin, vertical seam appeared. Rex backed up, tail straight, eyes locked on the seam, as if he expected whatever was behind it to fight its way out. Ethan pressed his fingers into the groove. A latch moved. The wall shifted. With a low groan, the entire panel swung inward. Cold air spilled out, sharp and dry. Rex growled, soft but certain. Behind the panel was a narrow opening, barely wide enough for a grown man to slip through. Stale air filtered up from a set of wooden steps descending into darkness. A structure too deliberate to be a mistake, too hidden to be innocent. Ethan flicked on his flashlight. "Stay close," he told Rex. Rex moved ahead of him anyway, breaking formation only when survival demanded it. Ethan didn't argue. He followed him down the narrow staircase. Each step moaned under their weight. The air grew colder the deeper they went, like walking into an abandoned mine. At the bottom, the flashlight beam cut across a room that didn't match the house above it. Filing cabinets, metal shelves, stacked boxes sealed with brittle tape. A desk pressed against the far wall. Everything arranged with intention. Someone built this room to be used. Ethan stepped forward, sweeping the light slowly across each surface. Dust hung in the air, but not thick enough to mean decades. Maybe months. Maybe weeks. Rex moved along the perimeter, nose low, searching for threats the way he used to search battleground courtyards. When he reached a hook on the wall, he stopped abruptly. Ethan turned the flashlight toward it. A jacket hung there. Wool. Heavy. Well kept. He brushed the collar and felt the faded stitching beneath his thumb. V. Hale. Ethan froze. Vernon Hale. Former mayor of Maple Ridge. Declared missing 6 years ago. Funeral held. Case closed. The man the whole town insisted was dead. Except his coat was hanging in a secret room under the house Ethan bought for 50 cents. Rex let out a sharp exhale, a sound half warning, half confirmation. Ethan pulled the jacket down and checked the pockets. Empty. But the weight alone told him something. Hale had been here recently. This wasn't a relic. It was a placeholder. He placed the jacket on the desk and opened the first filing cabinet. Inside were rows of land deeds, county maps, survey records, papers stamped with the town seal. All originals, many handwritten, all dated decades back. Ethan's flashlight flicked across page after page of boundary lines, signatures, approvals. Someone had been controlling the land around Maple Ridge. For years. Quietly. He pulled out a worn folder titled Ridge Parcel Reassignment. Inside were maps with sections marked off in red. Entire acres reassigned, erased, or transferred to names Ethan didn't recognize. Shell companies, fake addresses. It was a web of quiet theft. He felt Rex come up beside him, nudging his arm, urging him to stay aware. "I know," Ethan whispered. "I know this is big." He reached for another folder. This one marked operations. The first page showed the mansion's blueprint, but the blueprint didn't match the house above. Entire sections were blacked out. Additional rooms drawn underneath. A second basement. He swallowed hard. Rex suddenly stiffened. His ears shot forward, his head angled upward, toward the wooden staircase behind them. "What is it?" Ethan whispered. Rex's growl started low, then cut off sharply as another sound slipped through the ceiling. A floorboard settling. Slow. Heavy. Not wind. Not the house breathing. A step. Ethan's heartbeat thudded in his ears. Rex turned, positioning himself between Ethan and the stairs, body lowered into a stance Ethan hadn't seen since the desert. The dog wasn't scared. He was preparing to engage. Ethan swept the flashlight towards the staircase. Shadows danced across the steps, but no figure, no movement. Then came the sound. The front door of the house closing, not slamming, just a slow, deliberate shut. Ethan froze. Someone was upstairs, in his house. Rex growled again, deeper, vibrating through the floor. His tail stiffened, his entire body pointed towards the stairs like a weapon ready to be fired. Ethan killed the flashlight. They stood in darkness, perfectly still, listening. Above them, footsteps crossed the floor. Slow, confident, as if the intruder knew exactly where they were and exactly what they had found. Ethan's breath tightened. "We're not alone," he whispered. Rex pressed against his leg, steady and sure. A soldier's promise. "We'll face it together." By midday, the air around the stone mansion felt too tight, too full of unanswered footsteps and breath. Ethan needed supplies, a break, distance from the hidden room under the floor. He needed to think somewhere that wasn't soaked in the cold shadow of Vernon Hale's secrets. Rex hopped into the truck without being told. He sat upright, posture stiff, eyes fixed on the tree line, as if expecting someone to step out at any moment. Ethan ran a hand over his neck, the coarse fur warm beneath his palm. "Stay close today," he murmured. Rex didn't blink. The road into Maple Ridge cut through farmland stripped bare by winter. The town itself was small, quiet, older than its signs suggested. When Ethan pulled into the general store lot, two locals glanced his way. One nodded stiffly. The other looked at Rex the way someone looks at a loaded rifle. Inside, the cashier was the same man Ethan had seen the day he bought the house. He scanned cans and batteries without a word, eyes darting toward Rex, who sat at Ethan's heel, unmoving but alert. "Long drive out that place," the cashier finally said. Ethan nodded. Something in the man's tone loosened a knot inside his ribs. Curiosity he could handle. Suspicion was different. The cashier leaned in. "You stay in there alone." Ethan hesitated. "Got my partner." His eyes drifted to Rex. The man lowered his voice. "That house isn't meant for one person. Wasn't even meant for the last one." Ethan's pulse quickened. "The last one?" The cashier swallowed. "Some places hold on to the people who leave them." Before Ethan could speak, an older woman at the end of the aisle said with a tremor, "That stone place is not for the living. Not anymore." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in secrets. And fear this thick didn't come from superstition. It came from memory. Rex shifted, his nose lifted, his ears pricked hard toward the entrance. The door hadn't opened. No one had walked in. But Rex's gaze fixed on the glass window, muscles tightening the way they had outside the compound in Fallujah, minutes before the ambush cracked open the sand. Ethan set his basket down. Paying could wait. Outside, the parking lot was empty except for a sedan idling too far from the store to be casual. Tinted windows. Engine running cold. No movement inside. Rex growled, low and steady. Ethan breathed in slowly through his nose. His body remembered this feeling. The thrum beneath the skin. The pause in the air before something hit. He wasn't in a desert anymore, but the pattern was identical. "Come, Rex." Rex didn't move. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between Ethan and the sedan. Protective. Ready. His tail was stiff, angled downward, a fighting stance. The sedan door never opened. No window rolled down. But as Ethan walked toward his truck, the sedan eased into gear and pulled away with quiet precision. Ethan watched it until it disappeared around the corner. Back inside the truck, he sat still for a moment, both hands on the wheel, staring ahead. "What do they know that I don't?" he whispered. Rex pressed his nose against Ethan's arm, grounding him with a single, steady breath. They drove back toward the mansion. The fields rolled by, silent except for the hum of tires on pavement. But Rex didn't relax. His head stayed lifted, sniffing the air every few minutes. His chest rose faster. Sharp draws of breath meant to catalog scents Ethan couldn't detect. When they reached the long gravel driveway, Rex stood up in the seat, ears forward. "What now?" Ethan asked. Rex stared at the porch. The front door sat exactly as they left it. Closed. Still. But Rex jumped out of the truck before Ethan even cut the engine. He circled the front yard, moving fast, nose to the ground, tracing lines Ethan couldn't see. Then he froze near a patch of disturbed gravel. Ethan crouched. Footprints. One set. Deep. Heavy. Fresh. He followed the prints to the front step where they stopped abruptly. The air felt wrong again. Charged. Watching. Inside, the house greeted them with a silence Ethan no longer trusted. Rex entered carefully, his body angled towards the left wall where the hidden panel had been. Ethan checked the kitchen, the living room, the base of the stairs. Nothing had been moved, but the temperature felt different. Warmer in some spots, colder in others, like someone had passed through minutes earlier, leaving traces the house hadn't fully swallowed yet. Rex barked, a single sharp command. Ethan sprinted towards the sound. The dog stood in the foyer, staring at the staircase. "No," Ethan whispered. "Not again." He lifted the flashlight. The beam shook slightly as he climbed 2 steps. Rex stayed below, whining in short, anxious pulses. Not fear, urgency. That's when Ethan heard it. A soft click. Not upstairs. Behind him. The front door was swinging shut. Slow at first, then accelerating, as if pushed by a deliberate hand. Ethan jumped down the steps and caught it before it slammed. He shoved it open and scanned the porch. No one. No breath. No movement. But the cold hit him. Sharp and unnatural. The same temperature that seeped from the hidden room. Rex pressed against his leg, eyes wide, nose trembling with a scent Ethan wished he could understand. This wasn't just someone trespassing. This was surveillance, a message, a warning sent without words. Back inside, Ethan leaned his head against the door. His pulse hammered. His breath came tight. His palms were damp. The feeling was unmistakable. He knew it from the desert, from the night the convoy was hit, from every moment before something went wrong. "Someone is watching us," Ethan whispered. Rex's body touched his thigh, grounding him again. The dog's gaze locked onto Ethan's, steady and knowing, as if reminding him that this time he wasn't in the crosshairs alone. Whatever this was, Rex saw it first, and he wasn't letting Ethan walk blind into whatever waited next. The house felt different that afternoon. Not louder, not more alive, just aware. As if the walls finally understood Ethan wasn't simply passing through. He was digging, and the house didn't know yet if it wanted to help him or warn him. Rex moved first. He trotted down the back hallway with a precision Ethan hadn't seen since deployment, nose brushing the floor in steady, disciplined sweeps. The dog was tracking something no human sense could pick up. Not scent alone. Something older, something disturbed. Rex paused at the very end of the hall, tail straight, head tilted toward a patch of wall Ethan had walked past at least 15 times. A blank stretch of faded wallpaper bubbled from humidity. Nothing special. Then Rex growled, a low, deliberate rumble that made every hair on Ethan's arms lift. "What is it now, partner?" he whispered. Rex didn't answer. He reared slightly and scratched once at the baseboard. The sound came back wrong, not like plaster, not like wood, hollow, again. Ethan knelt and pressed his palm to the wall. The surface felt uneven beneath the wallpaper, beneath the dust, beneath the years. "Help me out," he murmured. Rex stepped back, giving him space. Ethan gripped the loose strip of wallpaper and tore. It came off too easily, peeling in a long sheet that revealed something he had no reason to expect. New wood. Not new as in smooth and polished, but newer than the century-old framing. A panel, jammed into place, covered, painted over, disguised. He dug his fingers into the edge and pulled. The wood groaned. Rex barked sharply, the kind of bark that meant keep going. With one hard yank, the panel came free. Behind it lay a dark opening. Not a crawl space, a tunnel. Ethan lifted his flashlight and shone it inside. A wooden staircase descended at a steep angle, the boards rough, unfinished. The smell rising from below was thick with earth, paper, and something else. Secrecy. Rex didn't wait for permission. He moved to the top of the stairs and stopped there, not descending, but blocking the entrance until Ethan joined him. Side by side, soldier and dog stepped into the dark. The staircase was quiet under their weight, almost too quiet, as if whoever built it wanted no sound to escape. When they reached the bottom, Ethan's breath caught. This room was different from the first basement. Smaller, rawer, a place that wasn't meant for records to be sorted, but for truth to be buried. Boxes lined the walls, some smashed open as if someone had searched in a hurry. Folders lay scattered across the dirt floor. Maps, Polaroids, old county stamps half scraped off. Rex circled the room in a tight arc. His tail hovered level, his body angled slightly forward, reading the space like a battlefield. He paused at a crate in the corner and whined. Ethan approached, shining the light inside. Land deeds, dozens of them, some authentic, others obviously forged. Parcel numbers altered, signatures mismatched. Boundaries shifted to redirect ownership. A systematic erasure of property lines. He pushed deeper into the room and found a large envelope tied with twine. When he opened it, photographs spilled out onto the floor. His stomach dropped. It was his father. Miles Cole, younger, smiling stiffly, wearing a surveyor's vest and holding a map tube under his arm. Ethan's throat tightened. Dad. Rex padded over and sat beside him, pressing the weight of his shoulder against Ethan's leg in silent understanding. Ethan flipped the photo. On the back was a date, a location scribbled beside it, and a signature. V. Hale. Ethan swallowed hard. He reached for the next photograph. This one showed his father standing next to Vernon Hale, outside a construction site near the river. Both men looked serious, determined. Something about the way their shoulders angled toward each other didn't look like a political handshake. They were arguing. Rex whined again. Ethan opened another file. It contained letters exchanged between survey teams and the mayor's office, requests for reassessment, complaints, red flags. Then he found a single sheet of paper, folded smaller than the rest, tucked into a corner like a secret too fragile to be found. His hands shook as he opened it. The handwriting was uneven, rushed. Don't trust the town. If you're reading this, we didn't make it out. They're not done. Protect the house. Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. Dad didn't die in a road accident. He didn't misjudge the curve. He didn't fall asleep at the wheel. He'd been silenced. Rex pressed his head against Ethan's knee, sensing the collapse inside him before Ethan showed any outward crack. Ethan inhaled, slow and shaking. The room felt smaller now, the air thinner, the weight of betrayal heavier than anything he'd carried in uniform. He stood and searched the far wall. Something glinted in the beam of the flashlight, a small metal lockbox. He reached for it, but before he could pull it free, Rex snapped his head towards the stairs. All at once the dog's entire posture changed, ears forward, hackles raised, body lowered into a ready stance that meant only one thing. Someone is here. Ethan killed the light. He held his breath. Above them, a faint scuff echoed through the wooden boards, the sound of a boot heel sliding slightly on old flooring. Then another step. Measured, slow. Ethan's pulse hammered. Rex didn't growl this time. He stayed silent, deadly silent. The intruder stopped at the top of the stairs. No movement, no breath, no voice, just presence. Ethan reached down and touched Rex's shoulder. The dog shifted his weight, preparing to move on Ethan's command or without it. That was when Ethan saw something else. A second shadow joined the first. Someone else had come. Ethan whispered into the darkness, voice barely sound. Dad didn't die by accident. Rex's body pressed closer, and now they knew Ethan was getting close to the truth. The fourth night came in cold and heavy, the kind of cold that seeped into wood, into lungs, into instincts that had once kept Ethan alive on foreign soil. The stone mansion sat under a moonless sky, its windows dark, its silence rigid. Ethan stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the old stove, listening for anything that didn't belong. Rex found it first. He was outside for barely 30 seconds, enough for Ethan to dump the last of the canned beans into a pot. Then came a sharp bark from the porch. Not warning. Not fear. Summons. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. Rex circled a patch of dirt near the fence line, body tense, nose locked to the ground. Ethan crouched beside him. The beam of the flashlight crossed 2 sets of footprints. Heavy boots, deep impressions. Fresh. Another set ran beside them, smaller, quicker, and between both tracks, a faint drag mark as if someone had pulled or pushed something. Rex followed the trail to the side of the house, nose tracing a line all the way to the breaker box. The metal panel hung crooked. Wires dangled like snapped veins. Then the porch light above Ethan flickered. Twice. Then died. Rex's growl vibrated through the night. Inside. Now! They moved together. Ethan slammed the door behind them and locked it. Rex's claws clicked across the floor as he made a quick perimeter sweep, stopping at the back window. His tail stiffened. Ethan smelled it at the same time Rex did. Gas. Faint, but unmistakable, seeping into the air from the kitchen. He lunged for the stove, twisted the gas valve shut, and threw open the window. A rush of cold air flooded the room. His pulse hammered. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been inside again. Someone capable, quiet, and confident enough to walk through the house without leaving a trace except the kind that killed. Rex barked toward the front door, a rapid series of sharp barks, each one edged with urgency. Ethan spun toward the sound. Someone was on the porch. He reached instinctively for a weapon he no longer carried. Rex planted himself between Ethan and the door, teeth bared, body coiled, ready to cut through whatever stepped inside. Then came the knock. Soft. Sharp. 1-2. A coded rhythm. Not local. Ethan grabbed the crowbar and pulled the door halfway open. A woman staggered inside, clutching her bag to her chest. Her breaths were frantic, her coat torn, dirt streaked across her face. Ethan recognized her from the newspaper bylines he'd read over the years. Julia Carter, independent reporter. The one who'd once written an article that nearly exposed Vernon Hale before it mysteriously vanished from every local archive. Rex didn't attack. He sniffed once, lowered his head, and stayed ready but not aggressive. She shut the door behind her, fumbling with the lock. "You're Cole, right?" she gasped. "You bought the Hale place." Ethan nodded. "What happened to you?" "I was followed." She took a breath that rattled. "They've been trailing me since I submitted a records request about your house. I thought I could warn you before they—" A sound cut her off, a soft scrape across the porch steps. Rex snapped around, growl rising like a storm gathering in his chest. Ethan killed the lights. They stood in the dark, listening. A shadow passed across the window. Then another. Julia pressed herself against the wall, trembling. "They know the files are here." She whispered. "They know Hale's work never left this property." Ethan's voice dropped. "Hale is dead." She shook her head. The kind of shake that carries too much truth, too much fear. "No, he isn't." Ethan's blood went cold. Julia continued, voice shaking. "He disappeared 6 years ago, but he didn't die. He went underground. He built a network. Deputy clerks, a judge, 2 surveyors. They funneled land into shell companies for decades, and anyone who got too close was erased or framed or bought off." Ethan stared at her, the room tilting as pieces crashed together inside his mind. "My father worked for him." Julia nodded. Miles Cole filed a complaint, a formal one, against Hale. 2 days later, he died in that so-called road accident, and Hale made sure nobody ever saw that report again. Rex whined softly, brushing his nose against Ethan's hand. Ethan felt his chest constrict. His father's last drive, the curve by the river, the files he'd never understood, all of it now lit by a single, brutal truth. Hale killed him. Footsteps outside snapped him back into the moment. Julia whispered, "There's more. They want this house back." "Why? Because the original records are here, the ones that can take down everything he built. If Hale gets them, if he buries them again, nobody will ever connect him to the thefts, to the disappearances, to your father." Footsteps approached the front door. Rex braced himself, body angled, ready. Julia's breath caught. Ethan moved beside the dog, gripping the crowbar like an old rifle. The doorknob twitched. A slow turn. Not testing. Knowing. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. Julia covered her mouth. Rex lowered into a stance that meant he was 3 seconds from launching forward. Then the doorknob stopped. Silence. Long. Calculated. A voice whispered through the wood. A voice too calm for the darkness around them. "You're trespassing in my house, Cole." Julia went pale. Ethan went still. Rex's eyes blazed. Because they all knew that voice. Vernon Hale, alive. And he wanted everything buried in the floorboards back. The footsteps withdrew, descending the porch with slow, deliberate confidence. No rush, no fear, no sense of being outnumbered. Ethan didn't open the door. Rex stood there long after the porch went quiet, guarding, watching, refusing to relax. Because this wasn't over. It had only just begun. Night didn't fall on the stone mansion. It pressed down on it. The fields surrounding the property lay under a blue-black sky, silent in a way that felt staged. Ethan moved through the house with a flashlight in one hand and a hammer in the other, checking every latch, every window. Julia sat at the dining table, surrounded by documents, her shoulders tense, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Rex patrolled the perimeter of each room with careful steps, nails ticking softly on the old wooden floors. Every few seconds he paused, ears pricked, nose testing the air. Something was out there. And not just one thing. Ethan kept glancing at the windows. His breath felt tight. He wanted to believe that Hale had simply left earlier, pushing fear through the door like a warning and walking away. But Rex's body told the truth that logic didn't want to accept. Hale hadn't left. He had begun. It started slow, a scrape across the porch, then the faint rattle of the back door knob. Julia looked up from her notes. "Did you hear that?" Ethan didn't answer. Rex had already moved to the kitchen doorway, muscles coiled, eyes locked. The doorknob twitched again, this time harder. Ethan whispered, "Stay behind me." Rex ignored the order. He strode forward, head low, teeth slightly bared. A growl vibrated through his chest, deliberate and controlled. The doorknob fell still. For 10 long seconds, nothing. Then came another sound, a metallic drag along the siding of the house. Slow, deliberate, like someone pulling a tool against the wall to let them know exactly where they were. Julia whispered, "They're not trying to break in. They're trying to scare us out." Ethan's stomach tightened. He moved to the front room, Rex shadowing him. The window by the porch revealed nothing but field and dark. Then the quiet broke again. A snap, sharp, clean. From the far side of the house. Ethan's heart dropped. That was fishing line. He grabbed the flashlight and sprinted to the back door. Rex overtook him, body low and silent. When Ethan shined the beam across the floor, the breath left his lungs. Thin, nearly invisible strings crisscrossed the base of the kitchen doorway. Trip lines, a dozen of them. Julia stood frozen a few feet away. How did they get in here? Ethan cut one of the lines carefully. The other ends led under the window frame, rigged to small metal canisters taped in place. Not explosives, but loud enough to create chaos. "They want us to run," Ethan said quietly. "They want to smoke us out. Or funnel us," Julia added. Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at Rex, who stared back with a steady, unwavering gaze. Then the noise came that broke whatever calm he had left. Footsteps on the porch. Slow. Measured. Someone testing each board, listening to how the house breathed. "You have 10 seconds to pack," Julia whispered. Ethan didn't move. His fingers tightened around the hammer until his knuckles went white. The old panic began to climb up his throat. The kind that once struck him in the middle of a firefight when the sand blew too thick and the radio went silent. He could almost hear it now. The rush of blood, the thud of boots, the invisible threat closing in. He turned to Rex. The dog lifted his head slightly, reading him with terrifying accuracy. Ethan whispered, "I think we should go. Just take the files and run. It's too much. This place isn't defensible. We can regroup. Come back." Rex moved. He stepped in front of the door, blocking it. A full barrier of fur, muscle, and unshakable resolve. Ethan blinked. "Move." Rex didn't. Ethan stepped right. Rex mirrored him. He stepped left. Rex intercepted again. Ethan's voice cracked. "Rex, move now." Rex didn't even blink. He stood planted, tail stiff, chest forward, eyes locked on Ethan with the same steady defiance he had shown the night Ethan nearly led their unit down a wrong path in Afghanistan. Julia watched, stunned. "He's not letting you leave." Ethan's handshake grew tight, his breath uneven. Something inside him broke open like a wound that had never really healed. "I'm tired," he said, voice trembling. "I'm tired of fighting ghosts, of thinking I'm imagining danger when it's real, and imagining safety when it isn't. I'm tired of everyone I care about ending up gone or buried. I can't lose this one, Rex. I can't lose you too." Rex stepped closer and pressed his forehead gently into Ethan's knee. Ethan's breath hitched. Julia looked away, giving him space. Ethan knelt, his hand gripping Rex's fur. "I'm scared," he whispered. "God, I'm scared. I don't know if I can finish this." Rex leaned forward, pushing his weight into Ethan's chest, grounding him with a slow, steady pressure that said what no human voice could. Not leaving, not running, not abandoning. Ethan closed his eyes. Outside, another noise cut through the night. Something heavy thudding against the fence. Then a whistle, 3 seconds long. A signal. Julia whispered. They're forming positions. Ethan stood slowly, wiping his face. His voice was steadier now, anchored. We're not leaving. Rex moved aside from the door, not as defiance now, but as agreement. The house creaked under the pressure of footsteps circling it. Shadows moved against the windows. The wind carried a low whisper of metal sliding against metal. Ethan picked up the hammer, then the flashlight. Julia tightened the strap on her bag. Rex stood between them both, staring at the door as if daring it to open. Let them come, Ethan said quietly, because for the first time in years he wasn't fighting alone. They drove out before sunrise. The sky was still a deep indigo when Ethan turned the truck off the main road and onto a gravel path swallowed by weeds. Julia rode in the passenger seat with a stack of copied documents on her lap, her hands trembling slightly despite her steady voice. Rex sat in the back, head between the seats, watching the woods with unwavering attention. Site B, Julia murmured, checking the map again. The quarry should be less than a mile ahead. They used it for dumping construction debris, old county files, anything they wanted forgotten. Ethan's jaw tightened. Or anyone. The truck crawled forward until the trees opened into a massive bowl of stone. A cold fog clung to the ground. Abandoned machinery rusted at the edges like forgotten skeletons. The place felt wrong immediately, a hollow where truth had been buried layer by layer. Rex stepped out first. He didn't sniff aimlessly. He moved with direction, with purpose, nose low, tracing a path along the quarry's rim. Ethan followed, boots crunching over gravel. He stopped at the edge of a drop, where piles of broken cement and scattered file boxes lay half-buried under dust. This is it, Julia whispered. Rex barked once, short and sharp, demanding attention. He pawed at a mound of debris until his claws scraped. Something metal. Ethan knelt and brushed away dirt. A steel lockbox, dented and scorched on one side. Julia crouched beside him. If they burned documents, some might still be intact inside. Ethan wedged the crowbar under the lid. The metal gave with a painful squeal. Inside were dozens of folders, some charred, some water-damaged, but many still legible, and on the top of the stack, a county survey report dated the year Ethan's father died. He lifted it with both hands. Julia leaned closer. That signature. That's Hale. The words punched through Ethan's chest. Property reassignment, land seizure approvals, sign-offs for eminent domain on parcels that never went to public auction. And in the middle of the stack, almost hidden, a handwritten note. Miles Cole witnessed discrepancies in acreage reports. Recommend neutralization before investigation spreads. Ethan went still. Neutralization. Julia breathed out shakily. They covered it up. They erased him. Ethan read the line again and again until the ink blurred. His chest tightened, his fingers trembling around the papers. Rex stepped closer, pushing his nose into Ethan's arm, grounding him. Ethan didn't realize he was shaking until the dog pressed harder. He steadied his breath. We take all of this. Every page. Julia nodded, already pulling empty bags from the truck. But as they loaded the documents, a sound cut through the cavern, a single set of footsteps on loose gravel. Ethan spun, hand instinctively dropping to his belt. Rex growled low. A figure appeared at the top of the quarry, backlit by the rising sun. Sheriff's Deputy Mason Crow. The same deputy who had warned Ethan in town with one too long stare. The same one rumored to be on Hale's payroll. Julia whispered. "We need to run." "No," Ethan said. "Wait." Crow raised both hands slowly as he descended the slope, boots slipping on the loose stone. "I'm not here to stop you," he called out. "If Hale knew I was out here, I'd already be dead." Rex bared his teeth but stayed beside Ethan, ready to launch if Ethan gave the slightest cue. Crow stopped 10 feet away, chest rising fast, eyes darting around the abandoned quarry as if expecting Hale's men to appear from the fog. "I've been sitting on something for years," he said. "I kept it as insurance because I knew one day this whole thing would blow up, because I knew Hale would turn on anyone who worked for him, even me." He reached into his jacket slowly. Rex growled, but Ethan gave a soft hiss. "Easy, buddy." Crow pulled out a thick envelope. Sealed. Worn. "These are copies of the original land transfer records. The real ones, not the forged versions Hale pushed through the county office. Your father signed some of them, and he refused to sign others. That's why he didn't finish. He didn't need to." Ethan swallowed hard. "You knew he killed my father." Crow's voice cracked. "I suspected, and I did nothing. I was young, dumb, thought I could climb the ranks. Then one night, he told me to drive out to the river and check if the truck was gone. And when I got there..." His voice trailed off. Rex stepped forward slightly, reading the shift in the man's breathing, the guilt pouring from him. Crow held out the envelope. "I should have come forward years ago. I didn't. But you can. You have the dog that found the basement. You have the records he couldn't destroy. You have everything Hale buried. You can burn him down." Ethan hesitated, staring at the envelope like it was made of fire. Then Rex barked. "Short, certain. Take it." Ethan reached out and grabbed the envelope. Crow exhaled sharply. "There's more. Hale isn't alone. He's got 2 county clerks, a commissioner, and half the survey office in his pocket. They'll all scatter when the story drops. But you need to move fast. He'll come for you before sunrise tomorrow." Ethan nodded once. "Thank you." Crow looked at Rex. "That dog of yours. He's got better instincts than any man I ever worked with." Ethan glanced down at Rex proudly. "Yeah, he always has." Crow backed away slowly, hands raised again. "I was on the wrong side too long," he said. "Don't let him win. Not after all this." Then he climbed back up the quarry slope and vanished over the ridge. Julia looked at Ethan. Breathless. "This is it. We have everything. Enough to expose Hale, enough to prove what happened to your father, enough to break the entire network." Ethan stared at the envelope in his hands. It felt heavy in a way that wasn't physical. Rex nudged his leg, tail low but steady. Ethan whispered, "We're finishing this. For Dad." Rex let out a single, confident huff. The sun rose behind them, lighting the quarry in pale gold. For the first time, the place didn't look like a graveyard of secrets. It looked like a battlefield they were finally ready to leave behind. They gathered the files, climbed into the truck, and drove toward Maple Ridge, racing the dawn. Because truth was no longer buried, and Hale was out of places to hide. The article went live at 7:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. Julia had stayed up the entire night, polishing every sentence, cross-checking dates, verifying signatures, and attaching scanned copies of the documents Ethan and Rex had recovered. She sent it to a trusted regional outlet first. Within 40 minutes, 3 national platforms picked it up. By noon, the story had reached networks Ethan used to watch in the barracks between deployments. The headline was impossible to ignore. "The Secret Empire of Vernon Hale, Buried Files, Buried Truths, and the Dog Who Found What a Town Tried to Hide." Ethan stood by the porch railing, phone buzzing non-stop in his pocket. He didn't answer anything. Not yet. He watched the long dirt road instead. Rex sat beside him, chest high, surveying the tree line like the house itself was under oath, and he was its sworn witness. From inside, Julia stepped out, blinking against the morning sun. "It's everywhere now," she said softly. "Reporters, legal advocates, retired county employees, everyone's talking. It hit bigger than I expected." Ethan didn't react at first. His gaze stayed on the horizon. "And Hale? Have they found him?" Julia shook her head. "He's gone. Packed up, abandoned his own house, shut off the utilities, cleared his accounts. He disappeared between midnight and dawn." Rex let out a low huff, as if he'd known Hale would run the moment truth caught scent of him. Julia walked to the edge of the porch, absorbing the quiet. "Maple Ridge isn't quiet today. Town Hall is a war zone. Half the council is lawyering up." The sheriff issued a statement pretending he didn't know anything. Nobody believes him. Ethan finally looked at her. Because he did know. They all did. He felt Rex lean into his leg, grounding him from whatever storm threatened to rise inside his chest. Julia spoke again, her voice gentler this time. "You didn't just uncover corruption. You reopened every family wound Hale buried. You gave people back their names." Ethan glanced down at Rex. "He did that. I just followed him." Rex looked up, eyes steady, unblinking, as if reminding Ethan of every night he had refused to let him quit, every step down every hidden stairwell, every growl that saved him, every truth he had pulled from the dirt, piece by piece. By afternoon, cars began lining the gravel road. People approached slowly, unsure at first, like pilgrims nearing a boundary they weren't sure they were allowed to cross. A man in a worn jacket stepped forward, holding a folder wrapped carefully in plastic. "My father worked on those land surveys. We all thought he walked away. But he didn't. Hale erased him. I just wanted to say thank you." Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Rex walked to the man, sniffed his hand, then pressed his head gently into the man's palm. The gesture broke the stranger. Tears welled instantly. More people came. A woman whose grandparents had lost their farm 20 years ago. A retired clerk who confessed she'd been threatened into signing falsified deeds. A young man who said he'd grown up hearing rumors of the men who vanished when they asked too many questions. Every story was a wound reopening, but not in pain, in healing. Ethan opened the stone house to them. He cleared out the old basement, scrubbed the walls, and built rows of wooden shelves from the lumber shed behind the property. Julia digitized every document. They made everything public. It wasn't much at first, just a dusty room with files and memories, but people treated it like holy ground. They came quietly, speaking in hushed voices, staring long at the photographs pinned to the walls. Some left letters, some left old keys. One woman left her father's county badge and whispered, "He always wanted someone to know the truth." Every evening, Ethan stayed downstairs for hours, labeling, organizing, rebuilding history piece by piece. And every night, Rex lay on the top step, watching the door, protecting the archive as if guarding the soul of Maple Ridge itself. Julia handled the press. Ethan handled the people. Rex handled everything in between. One afternoon, as Ethan worked on the final box, a young boy walked up the steps and stopped beside Rex. The dog lifted his head, one ear tilted, waiting. The boy whispered, "My grandpa said a dog once saved his life in Afghanistan. He said dogs know things people hide." Rex blinked slowly. The boy reached out and touched his fur. "Thank you for helping, Mr. Ethan." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight since the day his father's truck was pulled from the river. Julia approached with her laptop under one arm. "You know the strangest part? What? Every major outlet wants the same photo, the one of Rex standing guard by the filing cabinet in the hidden basement. It's gone viral. People are calling him the Sentinel of Maple Ridge." Ethan stared at Rex, who now lay sprawled lazily on the porch boards, blinking at him as if unimpressed. He deserves it. He does, Julia said. You both do. But Ethan shook his head. I survived because I had him. The house stayed safe because of him. The past spoke because of him. I'm just the guy who listened. Rex wagged his tail once, slow, modest, the way he always did when praise made him uncomfortable. The sun dipped towards the treetops, draping the yard in long gold shadows. People still wandered the lawn, reading the posted notices, tracing their family names on dusty pages, reconnecting with histories stolen from them decades earlier. Julia looked around. This place, it's becoming something more than evidence storage. It's becoming what it was supposed to be, Ethan said, a place that keeps people honest. Rex rose, stretched, and walked to the fence line. He paused, staring at the fields as if expecting someone to emerge from the tree line. Ethan stepped beside him. He's not coming back, buddy. Rex didn't move, didn't blink, just watched the horizon with quiet conviction. Ethan placed a hand on his back. But if he does, we'll be ready. Rex exhaled softly, satisfied. Behind them, townspeople spoke in calm voices, reunited by truths once buried. Above them, the stone mansion stood brighter than it ever had, like it had finally exhaled after decades of holding its breath. Justice had begun. Healing had started. And at the center of it all was a dog who refused to let the truth die. The camera lights were brighter than Ethan expected. He sat in a wooden chair on the porch of the stone mansion, the same porch he had stood on during storms, confrontations, and sleepless nights. Now it held microphones, tripods, and a local news crew from central Missouri. Fall breeze drifted across the yard. People still visited the archive downstairs, stepping softly as if walking through living memory. Rex lay at Ethan's feet, head high, eyes steady, watching every movement as if the crew were strangers entering a forward operating base. Urge had softened the fur around his muzzle, turning it silver, but nothing about the dog hinted at slowing down. He remained a sentinel carved out of loyalty and instinct. The reporter clipped her mic to her collar, smiled towards the camera, then turned to Ethan. Her voice was calm, almost reverent. The question everyone keeps asking is simple, and I think you're the only one who can answer it. She leaned forward just slightly. How did you even know something was hidden under that floor? Ethan let the silence sit for a moment. He looked down at Rex. The dog lifted his head, pressed it lightly into Ethan's palm, then settled again, eyes half closed, as if confident in whatever answer Ethan would give. Ethan smiled, soft, quiet, the kind that carried weight. I didn't know, he said. I didn't have a clue. I was ready to chalk everything up to the house being old, haunted by creaks and bad wiring. But he didn't buy it. He never does. Rex blinked, one ear tilting in that familiar way that used to earn him treats during training drills. Ethan continued, voice low. On deployment, I learned to read explosions, terrain, people. But this dog, he reads the truth. I just follow his lead. The reporter nodded slowly, and that truth changed an entire town. Ethan looked toward the gravel road where strangers still arrived daily. Some came with old letters, some with stories, some just to sit on the porch and breathe easier. The truth didn't change the town, Ethan said. People did. Good people. People who were scared, but brave enough to come forward when they realized they weren't alone anymore. Rex made sure of that. The reporter moved to her next question, but Ethan wasn't listening to her words anymore. He was listening to the quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't danger now. It was rest. He remembered the first night in the house, Rex growling into darkness he didn't understand yet. He remembered every warning bark, every blocked doorway, every moment the dog refused to let him give up. When the gas leaked, when someone tried to break in, when Ethan's fear nearly turned into surrender, every step toward the buried truth had started with a paw against the floor. He looked back at the reporter. The truth is, I didn't save this place. Rex did. He led us down those stairs. He found the hidden rooms. He pushed through a story the town tried to bury. He gave families back their history, and he gave me back my father's voice. Rex shifted, leaning his full weight against Ethan's boot. It wasn't just affection. It was understanding. The reporter lowered her mic. I think that's the quote of the year, she whispered. The camera crew began packing up. The sun had dipped low behind the pine trees, throwing long shadows across the steps. The remaining visitors trickled out, some waving toward Ethan, others stopping to scratch Rex's fur before they left. When the last car rolled away, the yard fell quiet again. Julia stepped onto the porch, tablet tucked under her arm. People are still sharing your story. It's blowing up online. The archive website crashed twice today. Ethan snorted. We'll need better servers. Julia smiled. Already ordered. She knelt to scratch Rex under the chin. You know, she murmured, people from 3 states over are driving here just to see him. I think he's becoming a legend. Rex didn't react, as if legends were irrelevant and his job still wasn't finished. Ethan watched him, his chest tightening with something that felt like gratitude and awe mixed together. He stepped off the porch and walked across the yard. Rex followed instantly, no hesitation, as if walking beside him was written in the dog's bones. At the fence line, Ethan stopped and looked at the horizon, the same direction Hale once disappeared into. Truth doesn't hide forever, Ethan said quietly. Not while he's around. Rex sat at his side, proud, calm, eternal. Julia called from the porch. There's a comment section under the interview. Thousands of people are posting stories about their own dogs. Ethan smiled. Good. They deserve it. Julia raised a brow. Should we film a close-up for the channel? Ethan glanced at Rex. The dog met his eyes. All right, buddy, Ethan said. One more for the world. Julia hit record on her phone. Ethan knelt beside Rex. If you're watching this, you already know how much this dog changed everything for me. He pulled a whole town's truth out of the ground. He carried me through days I didn't have strength for. I don't know what your story is, but I know this. He placed a hand on Rex's chest. There's nothing more loyal than a dog who refuses to walk away from you. Rex gave a single quiet huff, like punctuation. Ethan looked directly into the camera. What's your story with a loyal pet? Share it with us. And if this journey meant something to you, stick around. Subscribe to German Shepherd Stories, where loyalty has a voice. Behind him, the stone mansion glowed in the dusk. A house once filled with silence now breathed with truth. And beside him, Rex watched the fading light, the final sentinel of Maple Ridge, guarding not just a home, but a legacy.